Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Philip W. Dunn, Program Manager with U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. And on behalf of our President, Ron Busby, our board, and our staff, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this special recording of our U.S. Black Chambers webinar on financial wellness for the Black business owner. Now, this webinar is presented in conjunction with our very special partner, MassMutual. We want to thank them for the tremendous opportunities that they presented to us and their partnership and their support. And back here at USBC, we work closely with partners like MassMutual to develop quality programming that's designed to help our member businesses thrive and to succeed. So with that said, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, Mary Grate-Pyos, who's going to share a little bit more about her background, her experience, and how she's going to help you take your finances and your business to the next level. Mary?
Thank you so much. I certainly appreciate the opportunity with the U.S. Black Chamber. I am Mary Grate-Pyos, and I've been with MassMutual for 17 years. I'm a certified family business specialist. I call myself a proud geek in pearls. I'm a mathematician by degree, have an MBA from Syracuse University, and have been helping business owners and families helping them to get to the place of financial peace of mind and experiencing the financial wellness that they really want to experience. And I'm just excited to be here today. And again, thank you so much for having me. So the session today is financial wellness for the Black business owner. And there's a couple of things that make sure my slide moves here. First thing I want to do is congratulate you on for two things. One, for taking the opportunity to branch out on your own and be the risk taker that you are to start your business. And secondly, I want to commend you for showing up at a session talking about financial wellness. Michael Gerber talks about in E-Myth that many business owners, they are more apt to work in their business and not work on their business. And attending this session is about working on your business. And so I congratulate you for being a part of this. I hope I hope that some nuggets that I will share with you, that it will take your business and your life to the next level. But most of all, it will allow you to experience the financial peace of mind and the financial wellness that you so deserve. So when you think about the entrepreneur, there's a whole lot of characteristics that comes to mind. The very first one that comes to mind to me is risk taker. A business owner, entrepreneur is really the person that goes against the odds and big picture and going for it. They're apt to take the initiative in spite of what might be the rewards or the lack of rewards, but they know they have a vision. They know that they have a goal, and they are going forth and connecting with the challenges that come along with it, having the courage to branch out, keeping the big vision, having the tenacity to stay and stand strong and make it happen. But the other part to that is having a whole lot of faith over fear. And again, the entrepreneur, these characteristics really, really, really do define the entrepreneur. So today I want to share with you in three areas when it comes to financial wellness. And again, this is such a broad topic, but I want to share with you just three sections: growth mindset, addressing the what ifs. And the what ifs are the risk management strategy, the contingency planning that you need to put in place to make sure that you experience the wellness, the financial peace of mind that you want. And then the last part of that is the employee engagement. And again, this is such a broad topic, but I want, again, focus specifically on these three areas for you. So how would you define financial wellness? Would you define it as having enough cash or having access to cash to properly run your business? Would you say it's having the capacity and the strategies in place to mitigate any business risk? Would you say it's having a mindset and a strategy for growth? Because, some entrepreneurs are the rainmaker, they're the visionary. They have the big mindset. So would that be financial wellness to you? And then applying and having the right team to implement it? Is financial wellness to you being able to meet the financial obligations, not only just on your personal side, but on the business side as well? Being able to pay your employees, being able to pay for all the resources, the supplies that you need. Is financial wellness about having the financial freedom to make the choices that will allow you to enjoy life? How do you define financial wellness? And just like when you're having a definition of what wealth is, financial wellness, well, all of these items have a different definition depending on what your personal goals are, what your business goals are. And so how you define financial wellness is predicated on your vision, what your goals are, what the things that your action steps, the tactical action steps that you want to put in place. So think about what your definition is, and then take that definition and glean the information that I'm going to share with you as we talk about the growth mindset, addressing the risk management strategies, as well as how do we engage our employees to get to their level of financial wellness. So there are several challenges specifically to the African American or the Black business owner. One, and leading the pack, is the access to capital. The next part is the cash flow. Then it's this big thing we call the wealth gap, that even though we may make the money because of all the other obligations that we may have, or maybe because of systemic racism and all the things that happen in this country, the wealth gap might be getting wider and wider and wider. But again, it's a challenge because we may not have the same financial capacity as other races might have. What about the average earned revenue? When you think of small business owners or big business owners, there are some average earned revenue or average profit or average size. You know, there's a statistic that says that most business owners never get to the $1 million mark in revenue. They average around 250,000, especially for women entrepreneurs. But these are all challenges that we can overcome with the right tactics that we can put in place. The other big challenge too is the personal spending habits. When you look at the amount of money that African Americans have and the amount that we spend versus what we save and the amount that we just, whether we can keep track of it or not, it's the spending that gets out of control, that erodes the wealth that we may have. Then it's the lifestyle business. And again, your business may not be a lifestyle business, but because you don't put the tactics in place to make sure that that business can grow and thrive, it ends up being a lifestyle business because you didn't have a solid foundation. And then, of course, especially during the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, this whole bit. And again, in America, the systemic racism that happens. All of these are challenges for the African American business owner. But here's the thing. You are standing on the shoulders of people who have gone before you, who have done well, who have paid for colleges and universities, who have paved the way for you to even be and to even think like an entrepreneur, who paved the way for you to dream the biggest dream that you could dream. And these challenges will take some action steps for us to overcome them. But yes, they can be overcome. At least that is my hope. So let's talk a little bit about building the strong business foundation. Of course, you've got your business name, your EIN, and it's important to pass on the liability, not just being a sole proprietor, but passing on the liability, whether it's an S Corp or C Corp or LLC. But again, these are some of the foundations that you know that you have to have in place, your business plan. And the one thing I always tell folks when I work with them, business owners, like, let's look at that one-page business plan, 12 font, one-page business plan, and let's implement that for the year. What's your vision? What's your mission statement? Are you adhering and staying true to that? What is that service that you provide, and the service that you provide that no one else can provide? Who is your target market? Like, can you identify? And it's not everybody. It can't be. And the more you find your niche, the better you are to serve them and to know the trends and the marketing that can go with that particular group. So again, and then the other part too is marketing to your target market. Like, what are those things that they can identify that you could share with them? So again, the goal is to have a solid business foundation so that you can build upon that and thrive. So let's start with the very first thing that I believe is a key component of financial wellness, and that is a growth mindset. It's how you think about being an entrepreneur. It's how you carry yourself based on your thought process. It's how, with the things that you declare and you speak over your own life, over your business, that growth mindset. So let's talk about that a little bit. And it's two main areas. One is the mindset for success, and the other one is the self-awareness. And let's talk about the self-awareness for a minute. What's the big picture? What's your perspective on being an entrepreneur? Is it to serve? Is it to satisfy a need in the community? Is it satisfy a need in the world at large? One of the terms I've coined recently in terms of a perspective is, what's your financial vendetta? Like, what's your perspective on how you deal with money? Is it that you feel that, okay, I'm of the perspective that I earned this, so thus I could buy this now, or I finally arrived, and so I deserve to get this? Like, what's the big perspective? What is it that allows you to spend, and to either spend with peace about it or spend in having regrets afterwards? But you have to have this big perspective of knowing who you serve, knowing how to serve them, but most of all, knowing why you're serving. You know, Simon Sinek talks about your big why, knowing what your why is. And once you figure out the why, the how will come around. The other thing is, under the self-awareness, is the burden of the Black tax. And you're saying, what in the world is the Black tax? The Black tax is the psychological baggage that you have that goes along with, you are the one that arrived. You're the one that has the money in the family. You're the one that everyone comes to make sure that if somebody needs money to go to college, somebody needs money to pay for their rent or their mortgage, or somebody needs to have money for swimming class, or all the extra, or Big Mama needs help with whatever. This is the guilt that we have. This is Black tax. The guilt that we have that comes along with having to have arrived to a certain place, a certain status, but yet still feeling obligated to go back and help someone else in your family. And again, this is huge for us. When you look at the wealth of African Americans, the burden of the Black tax is a key component of why our wealth is not that of other races. Because not only do we have to take care of our own family, but we have to take care of our children, and then we also have to take care of our parents. And so that burden, that psychological burden, and the guilt that goes along with it is what's defined as the Black tax. And you'll know, if you're the one in the family that everybody comes to, you know that you're the one who has secured that position in the family and everybody runs to for the advice. Then let's talk about the money blueprint. When we talk about the mindset for success, your money blueprint is how you've been programmed to respond to both money and to wealth. Your money blueprint has everything to do with your upbringing. You know, I'm a Southern girl, so there's certain things about the Deep South that may have been ingrained in me as I grew up. And then I grew up in an unincorporated area in the Deep South. So there was a way of thinking that there's a way to be, and you can't do this or you can't do that. And it takes a lot of work to kind of break that blueprint, to make sure that you move and you gain and get the success that you want by reshaping and rethinking how you look at money and how you look at wealth. It's also about the experiences that you've had with money. If you've had a bad experience, or if you did something and it failed, you're like, well, I'll never, ever do that again. That shapes how you think about money. But it also shapes on how you run your business, how you operate your business, and how you move through the world, or how you go after business as well. But that money blueprint is really key. It's also the money triggers. Like, what triggers certain things for you when it comes down to money? Is it, well, if you don't have a certain amount of money in a savings account, does that send you off? Or are you the one that like spend, knowing that, well, I'll be able to get it back another way? So then you become the risk taker. The other part that I think is really key in terms of mindset for success is this fixed or growth mindset. And I think I have a slide on that. And I know this is a big slide, but I want to read a couple of things, read this, and so you can understand the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So a fixed mindset assumes that our character, our intelligence, and creative ability are static givens, which we can't change in any meaningful way. And success is the affirmation of that inherent intelligence. And so you strive for success, but yet still you avoid failure at all costs. And it becomes a way of maintaining the sense of being smart or skilled, because you're just playing it safe. You're in your comfort zone. However, the growth mindset, on the other hand, thrives on challenges, and it sees failure as an evidence of unintelligence, but as a heartening springboard for growth and for stretching our existing abilities. Out of these two mindsets, which we manifest from a very early age, springs a great deal of our behavior, our relationship with success and failure in both personal and the professional contents, and ultimately our capacity for happiness. And this is taken from the book Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. Awesome book. If you have the opportunity to read it, you should consider that. But again, going back to the previous slide, that fixed or the growth mindset. You may start off with a fixed mindset, but you can also shift into the growth mindset. And again, this is a key component on how you think, how you manage a business, how you look at the big vision that you may have for your business in order to get to the level of financial wellness that you want to be. So now let's talk about the risk, the contingency planning or the risk management strategy, addressing the what ifs of life and a business. And these are what I call the 10 Ds. And these are really key for a business. And these 10 Ds, if addressing them, can provide you the stability that you need as a business owner. And I'll go through each one of them and I'll give you the strategy for each of these sections. Death, what happens if you die prematurely? Disability, extended illness, or injured, or some level of sickness. Having debt, too much debt, or sometimes not enough debt. What about divorce? What about a disagreement between you and your partner or a key employee? What happens if you decide you want to depart the business, or maybe you have a partner, one partner wants to depart and you don't want to leave? How do you separate the business? Disruption talks about COVID, or in 2008 when they had the market crash. Disruption could be the government not paying, shutting down and not having funds available. What happens if you want to dissolve the company? And then what happens if you disappear? Don't die, but you disappear. What if a plane goes down, you live, but then do you have a contingency plan in place to make sure that your business is able to still thrive? And the 10th one, which is really key, and I deal with this a lot with many people that I come in contact with, is the denial. This is not my story. I don't need any of this stuff. I'm good. We got this. But denial says you bury your head in the sand and say, I'm good. I don't need to put any plans in place. But here's hopefully you realize, especially during the last 18, 19 months, that all of these Ds, these things that could destroy your business, I call them the business destroyers if they left unattended. These things can destroy your business, and if you don't pay attention to them and put tactical action steps in place, could derail everything that you're working on. So let's go through each of these Ds. The very first one, in terms of addressing the what if, it's death, the risk of dying too soon. So in the event that you've never heard of this, one of the key components of this is making sure that you have key person insurance in place. And you ask, what is key person insurance? Key person insurance is the insurance that's on the business owner or the key employees of the business, that in the event of their death, there's an infusion of cash that goes into the business to make sure that the business is able to thrive, or there's enough infusion of cash to make sure that either you can sell the business or hire somebody to take care of it, or to evolve it. So the key person insurance is the policy itself is owned by the business is the beneficiary, and the business is also the payor. So in the event of death, you need to make sure all business owners really do need to put this in place, key person insurance. The other part too, when you're addressing the risk of dying too soon, do you have a business continuity plan? What about a partnership agreement? What about the effect on your family in the event that you, the business owner, who brings in maybe the majority of the money into the family, what happens to your family, your mortgage, your children going to college, your vision, your plans, your hopes, your dreams, your goals? What happens to that if you die prematurely and you don't have a plan in place? But the other part too is, if you have a business partner, do you have a buy-sell agreement in place? But the other part, going back to the black tax, are you that person in the family that has to pay for everybody else's funeral because they didn't plan it properly? So making sure that you look at what happens if, and especially if you're paying for family members, making sure that you have all of these things in place. Again, key person insurance, making sure your family members are taken care of, having buy-sell agreements in place, making sure that you have a personal life insurance policy in place, as well as updated beneficiary. That is very key for us. Because if you're dealing with multiple marriages, or if you're dealing with maybe you just got married and you had somebody else as a beneficiary, but all of these things are things you need to put in place when you're dealing with the risk. And again, we're talking about financial wellness. Financial wellness says that I'm putting the strategies in place that when life happens, we still are okay. We still can experience the peace of mind that we want. The next what if is disability, the risk of sickness, injury, or an extended illness. So what happens if you lose your capacity to get wealth? And when I ask individuals sometimes, like, what's your greatest asset? Okay, besides your relationship with your creator, what's your greatest asset? Your greatest asset really is your ability to create wealth, your ability to earn an income. And so you need to protect your income, and you protect that with a disability income insurance policy, or if it's for the business, it's called a business overhead expense policy. And so you want to put this in place to make sure that in the event that something happens to the business, in the event that you become disabled, all the expenses of the business up to the amount that you've covered will be taken care of. There's a whole lot of people during COVID realized that they didn't have the disability policies or the business overhead expense policy or the disability buy-sell agreements in place when COVID happened. What happens if you're sick for an extended period of time? The other thing too is that you can have sufficient cash on hand, which means that you're self-funding everything. But when that cash runs out, are you still going to be okay? The other piece I think is really key for us in the Black community is doing long-term care planning. Like, what happens if you have an extended illness and you're not able to take care of yourself, whether it's a nursing home, assisted living, do you want to be taken care of in your home? We need to make sure that we have those things in place. And again, making sure that you protect your income and your ability to get well. What about debt? Let's talk about the risk of having too much debt. And for some people might be on the call, they may not have enough debt because they may not have enough credit to make sure that they can go out and get a business loan for their business. But when we talk about debt, what I thought was really interesting, especially during COVID, is that many of the African American business owners were playing catch up and trying to build a relationship, for instance, with the banker for the PPP funds, where other races had already had a relationship with the banker and they were able to apply quickly to get the funds that they needed. So then now, if you don't have the relationship with the banker, for instance, it affects your ability to have access to cash in times of need, like in COVID. So let's go back to the very top one, managing your spending, not only on the personal side, but as well as on the business side. But the other part too is understanding your cash flow. Do you know how much money you need to bring in every single month for your business to thrive? The other thing too is, I always say you need to have a contingency fund. You know, sometimes on the personal side, people call it emergency fund. Sometimes people call it, what I call it is a peace of mind fund or a contingency fund, that in the event that an emergency happens, I have enough funds on hand to take care of that particular situation. You also need to ask, and this goes along with the relationship with the bank, get lines of credit and have that relationship with the banker before you need the funds. Establish that relationship and get the funds in advance. The other big thing for us as well is to make sure you file your taxes and manage those student loans. Those are the two really big key when it comes down to debt in the Black community. File your taxes and manage your student loans. Right now, I know that the student loan is on hold, so that, there's no interest being charged on it. But it's also a good time, if you do have the funds, to start paying down that debt. You can't even charge off student loan debt. So that's going to be a debt that's going to be with you until you pay it off, unless you qualify for some of the ways, such as if you're in a particular school as a teacher and they allow you to pay for it for 10 years, and then all of a sudden that debt is clear. So anyway, address the debt that you may need to look at. Have a plan on how to get out of debt. Have a set amount that you pay every single month to get rid of the debt, and pay that every single month until all the debt is paid for. But again, too much risk, especially on the business side, when it comes down to debt, can derail your business. On this one, this D, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot on this one. Divorce, the risk of marital discord. I really don't. The only thing I can tell you that it does matter who you marry. I got married 6 days after college to a man I did not know, and no, I was not pregnant, and no, it was not an arranged marriage. However, I got married 6 days after college, and I am proud to say I'm still married over 30-something years. And but it doesn't matter who you marry. I am an entrepreneur at heart. He is not an entrepreneur, but I had to get him to come on board. Me just stepping out and being an entrepreneur. So not everybody has the same level of risk tolerance when it comes down to that, but it does matter who you marry. If you know that you're going to start a business and you're single, or you're about to get married, you may want to consider a prenuptial agreement. And then the other part too is having updated buy-sell agreement. Some business owners have it set up in their wills or trust or in their agreements that, certain members of the family, the spouse, or they don't want to work with another spouse or whatever. The buy-sell agreement with your partner sets that up. So make sure that you put those things in place. But again, I don't have a whole lot to say on the divorce. All I'm saying is just marry well. Disruption. And this disruption has to do with the risk of an item like COVID or another business disaster. What happens if the government shuts down for 3 months and 6 months or whatever? And I know we've had that before, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. But there's a couple of things that you could do when it comes down to disruption. Have enough savings and contingency. MassMutual has a logo that says you can't predict, but you can prepare. And you need to have enough savings and contingency funds and money and lines of credit. But here's the other part too, why savings is so important. Even if you have lines of credit in a crazy economy, the bank may pull that line of credit. So you need to make sure that you have sufficient funds to take care of all of the things that you have that you held responsible for. The other thing that was key and it showed up, especially in the last 18 months, is this business disruption insurance. And this is in the event that something happens outside of your control, it becomes an infusion of funds for your business to make sure that your business continue to thrive. You can always plan for the unexpected when times are good. Always save a little bit of everything that you earn. Don't spend to the last. A lot of times I find that business owners will say, all right, I'm going to turn around and put the money right back in the business. But you also need to set aside money and have a stash. The other thing too is you may want to write down, have it in writing. So your employees, your stakeholders, your centers of influence, everybody knows what's your contingency strategy in the event that disruption happened. We should not be trying. It's hard to make a decision in the midst of a challenge. And you're only making the decision then that's right for that moment. So have a business continuity strategy in place prior to. And if all else fail, pivot. That's been a big thing the last 18, 19 months. If all else fail, pivot. But make sure you know how to come back to your core vision and mission statement when this is all over and done with. Then let's talk about the risk of a discord between business partners or key employees. And that's the risk of disagreement. What happens if you disagree with a key employee? Well, you're the CEO and you're the owner. Well, you need to make sure that you vet really well when you first come on board, when the employee comes on board. You can have the non-compete agreements. You can have all those things put in place. But you can also have a buy-sell agreement in the event there's a disagreement between two business owners. And the buy-sell agreements, when everybody's getting along, put it in place. That ended what happens if we disagree, what happens, who's the majority owner, if we equal ownership, what do we need to do? And the buy-sell agreement will spell out all of the criteria for when a discord happens, when people are disagreeing. The other thing you want to do too is have a detailed partnership agreement. But again, disagreement, making sure that you address it early in the business, because it's kind of tough to do exit strategies for a disgruntled employee in the middle of a disgruntled employee fight, or to do a buy-sell agreement in the middle of a fight, because nobody wants to talk about it then. Do those things in the beginning, because you've got to address them. As a matter of fact, you even need to address your exit strategy while you're starting your business in the very early stages, not waiting 10, 15 years later and decide to have an exit strategy. But the disagreement, making sure that you have a buy-sell agreement in place and detailed partnership agreements as well. What about the departure? Leaving on your own terms. Like, what's your exit strategy? Do you know when you want to leave the business? Do you know what your exit plan is? Do you want to sell the company? Do you want to sell it to current employees? Do you want to sell it to a second, third party? Do you want to sell it to your business partner? Do you want to do a stock option to sell it? What's your exit strategy? And again, like I said earlier, you want to know what your strategy is at the beginning while you're starting the business, because your decision-making process is completely different when you're planning to sell the business instead of deciding, okay, I'm going to do this and well, maybe we should consider selling. Your decisions are completely different. So making sure that, and some folks, especially if they're serial entrepreneurs, I'll just keep doing this. I don't have an exit strategy. Well, that might be true, but what does that look like if you have somebody else run the business and you're just on the sideline as a coach or a mentor? And so those are the ones that I want to talk about: the denial and dissolving the company and the um, disappearance. Those are the three that I left undone. But we want to make sure that you deal with all of those, the D's, because they can derail the business. This is from Black Enterprise in the entrepreneurial section. It says, we as African Americans have the capacity to pass on more wealth than any previous generation, wealth needed to continue to finance the progress and empowerment of future generations. However, citing that nearly 70% of African Americans have no will or estate plan in place, Graves went on to say that this potential cannot be realized if we don't collectively commit to estate planning. And addressing the D's, looking at your vision, looking at your state, your growth mindset, looking at how you manage money. All of these things are part of the estate planning. All of these things are part of business succession planning. It's all about business continuity. It's about making sure that you are okay, that you're experiencing wellness, peace of mind in the event that life happens. And again, we've got to take the action. It's one thing to know this information, but it's a totally other thing to make sure that we're putting the tactical action steps in place. Again, not only just working in the business, but we have to work on the business as well. So let's talk about the last piece of this, and this is the employee engagement. Just wanted to check if we had any questions at this point.
Yes, Mary. So far, this has been a very engaging and interesting conversation, and I'm so glad to be here to witness it, because I am seeing a couple of questions that are coming in. And number one, folks want to know, obviously, if this is going to be recorded, and yes, it will be. But then they also want to know if you can share the PowerPoint slide, and I told them I would ask you for permission to see if we'd be able to do that.
I'm pretty sure we can do that.
Okay, perfect. All right, so then our first question comes from Sandra. And she asks, or she wants to know, should there be separate insurance for an individual who is a solopreneur?
Separate. Can we get clarification when she says separate insurance? If they're a solopreneur, are they talking about the personal and the business? Or I'm assuming they're thinking, do I need some on the personal side and do I need it on the business side?
Okay, well, I will ask her for clarification, but I'm assuming that yes, she is asking about insurance for, personal. She says yes.
Okay.
So asking for, one for your personal life insurance, and then for your business as well. And it sounds like the answer to that is going to be yes. But go ahead.
Absolutely, the answer would be yes. When you think about the personal insurance is taking care of your mortgage, your water bill, your light bill, your gas, your children's college education, taking care of all of the dreams and goals on the personal side. On the business side, the key person is going to take care of your employees, is going to take care of your business debt in the event that you die prematurely, is going to take care of clearing up anything that you have to do on the business side. And it's always nice to keep your personal life separated from your business, just like you're separated in terms of a banking account, a checking account. One for the business, one for the personal side. So yes, it's definitely recommended that you do two separate and split them up on the business and the personal. It makes it a little bit cleaner in the event that you die prematurely to kind of to close that out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that answer. And then I'll also have you said a tremendous number of things. I'm going to let you finish the presentation. Sandra says thank you, by the way. But
Absolutely.
You mentioned about 7 challenges that we all face. I mean, anyone faces, right? But in particular, our community: access to capital, cash flow, the wealth gap, our challenges with our earned revenue, personal spending habits,
Yes.
lifestyle businesses, and systemic racism. Tell us, Mary, out of all of those things, what would you think is our biggest challenge? And I think you probably alluded to it earlier, but I really want to make sure that we hone into this. Out of all of those 7 things, the wealth gap, the lifestyle, the systemic racism, access to capital, what is the biggest challenge our community faces?
So I would say it's the wealth gap. I would say it's the wealth gap for this reason. Part of it is that we have the money, but it's the priority of the money that we have. And the wealth gap also has a lot to do with how we spend, how we live, the things that we spend our money on. To me, it's daunting sometimes when you look at the numbers, when you see that the Hispanic population, their wealth gap is higher in many instances than the African American. But yet still the amount of money that we spend is huge. And I get it. It's, we get paid less. I get it. You may not have access to cash, but when you do get access to cash, do you do the wisest thing with the cash?
Right.
See, systemic racism. Okay. You've got to thrive in the midst of that. Okay. When you think of access to money in the bank, okay, yes, at a certain point, okay, but we make the money as well. We earn the money as well. So I would say for me, it would be the wealth gap, because the systemic racism has a lot to do with it, but we also make the money. Well, we could do a little bit better with it. I'll tell you something that a friend of mine mentioned to me, is that when you talk about how we spend our money, she was saying that you just can't have a landlord and a Land Rover. Like you just can't pay rent and have a Range Rover. There's just certain things that you just can't have. And I think the wealth gap comes in how we spend our money. I always say this: give your money an assignment. Every penny that you have, that you bring in as a business owner, even on the personal side, give your money an assignment. This is going to pay for this. This is going to pay for my retirement. This is going to do this in the future. This is going to do this. And then make sure that you're on that list. Make sure that you're saving money for you as well. So for me, I think it's the wealth gap.
Okay, and I appreciate that response. I'm going to pile on with that, because I think it's our spending habits that help to support and widen the wealth gap, right?
Absolutely.
So if I make $100,000 a year and I spend $120,000, but I don't invest any of that, then I'm contributing to the wealth gap. And if I don't invest in the products and the services that I purchase the most,
yes,
then I'm actually, spending unwisely. So I definitely appreciate your response on that. And I got a couple more questions, but I know we got a couple more.
That's okay. I'll make sure we end on time. I'll make sure.
Okay, I'll let you finish. Thank you, Mary.
If you want to ask another question, you can.
Okay, so you talked about the big why, and you sort of gave us some insight into that. But I don't think that we really pay attention to the emotional, psychological aspect of why we have certain behaviors. Give us some insight into what we need to do in order to go from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset that you alluded to earlier. Because like you, I grew up in the South. We like to call it coming out of the mud, right? And we went to college and we worked in corporate America, but there's still that mindset that, we can't do certain things or we're limited to certain things. But I think we can break away from that. Talk to us about that aspect, that component.
The best I can do is use myself as an example. Like, again, I share with you, I grew up in rural South, and I grew up also a depressed teenager. And the first thing to do is, at least for me, recognizing, and for me, attending college and matriculating in colleges with people that did not look like me. And I was like, and it's not that I was doing a comparison, but you mirror yourself. You look and say, okay, how do they think about that thing? How do they think about that? Well, okay. And here's the other thing too. Like, I paid my entire way through college without any student loans or any debt at all. My son says, yeah, you were old and it was way back then, but it was comparable to what we do right now. So for me, I just refuse to, like, I worked 2 or 3 jobs in the summer months. And and part of that too was feeding my mind. Like, I read a lot of books, like the one on the mindset book. I read a ton of books. I listen to podcasts, and I challenge how I think about money. I got into this whole money piece and majored in mathematics because somebody says I couldn't do it. So what I said was, let me challenge myself. Is that true? So everything that people say to you about your life isn't not necessarily truth unless you okay it with it and call it truth. And so for me, is that I'm constantly challenging myself, because I'm mirroring myself against somebody that might be a mentor that doesn't even know that they're mentoring me. Kathy Hughes might never know that she's a mentor of mine, or Sheila Johnson might never know that they're mentors of mine. But I think part of it is you've got to challenge yourself to get out of one, negativity. Number two, get out of this, I can't do it. Number three, I'm just Black. I'm just a woman. I'm just a whatever it is that you put out there. And for me, I just always challenge it. And part of that comes from the books that I read, the people that stretch me, the people that I hang around, the podcasts I listen to. I could be in South Carolina right now because I live close to Myrtle Beach. I could be making beds because that was being a domestic. I could be doing that. But because I stretch my mind to read and to look and think differently, I end up as a financial advisor. I end up as a certified family business specialist. The other thing too was even early on, I realized it just by the colleges that I chose to go to. I went to predominantly white colleges because I had all Black teachers from first grade to 12th grade. What a wonderful blessing. But because of the books that I read, I realized, Mary, you cannot compete until you deal with different people instead of just people in your own race. And so I purposely chose those colleges to go to. And so I think the getting to this, because I was a fixed mindset. I was. And I end up becoming more of the growth mindset because I from the declarations and the things that I spoke over my life on a daily basis, the things that I declared about my life even before I see them come to pass, the things that I write down. And here's the thing, if you're dreaming in your head, dream the biggest dream. Like, why would you play small in your own head? And so I'm saying, go for it, go big. And the thing about it is, if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, that's a true statement as well.
That
and I
sure
think,
is.
there was a quote that I like, and it says, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it says, sometimes, and I'm paraphrasing this, he says, sometimes we need, we're blocking our own sunshine. We're standing in our own way of getting to the next level. And if it's a business owner, and the biggest thing too is you've got to do the work. You've got to do the work. You've got to put the foundation there. In order you to get to financial wellness, you got to stop spending. You got to save a little bit. You got to put the plans in place. You got to dream big. You got to go for it. And so I think that's part of it, at least for me, on the growth mindset. I know that's a long way of doing it. And I use myself as an example because I came from mediocre, but the home I grew up in was all about how you think and what you thought, what the words that you would speak to yourself.
No, that's perfect. And I'm glad that you brought that to the table. And I think it kind of leads to another question that I had around the 10 Ds that you talked about, and that is facing risk. And, oftentimes either in our community, we tend to avoid risk. We don't want to take risk in order to get to the next level, or we don't think about risk. Tell us a little bit more about the importance of dealing with those 10 Ds. It's almost a checklist that you could give to us to say, hey, if you can tackle these 10 things, and even the marriage part, make sure that you married well. I think I got lucky in that I married well.
I did too.
Right. And so I think that if we had that checklist for life, then I think it'll position us to take advantage of opportunities in the future. So just share just a little bit more on that. And I know we got a little bit more to go.
Absolutely. When you even if we avoid risk, the risk is still there. The risk of dying prematurely, the risk of being disabled, the risk of getting a divorce, the risk of a disruption, the things that are so out of your control, there's still a risk. Even if you deny or you say, I don't want to deal with it, there's still a risk. Because even if you don't pass away or you don't die prematurely, what happens if your key salesperson passes away? What happens if your key employee becomes disabled? And so even if you deny and say, well, I don't, that's just too much. Well, it does not mean that the risk is still not there. And so you might as well, at least if you're going to be a solid business owner, why not at least put a small contingency plan in place, even if you don't address all of them? Like the two biggest ones that will derail Black businesses, other than divorce, will be death, dying prematurely, and the disability. And not having a savings account, a contingency plan for disruption, like COVID. Like, why is it that Black business owners, were more negatively affected during COVID? Why is it that there's been an uptick in everybody with GoFundMe pages? Like a GoFundMe plan is not a financial plan. Like, we all know we're going to die. As a minimum, business owners, get the key person insurance. At least get that. And so I just think those 10 Ds, and I know many of my colleagues will do just the first 5, but the more I went, the more I'm like, okay, it's all of these. You got to make sure, at least talk about them. Now, at least talk about them, because if you choose not to put nothing in place, then look at the consequences. And if you're able to live with the consequences, then that's good.
All right, those were my 3 questions that I had at the moment. I'm going to come back once we close with a couple more points. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. So let's talk about the employee engagement when it comes down to financial wellness. Because when you hire employees, you want to make sure that they are doing well is also, because those 10 Ds are for the business owner. But what about, how do we engage the employees to make sure that they are producing at a level that affects your bottom line? Positively producing at a level that positively affects your bottom line. Because if you treat your employees right, your employees will treat you right. If not, they'll say, take slow to hire and quick to fire. So anyway, there are ways that you can engage employees so that they could experience the same peace of mind. And one is doing seminars in the office, and especially on Zoom, it's an easy thing to do. Of someone saying, can you do a session for employees on managing debt, which is key. It's huge. That's why I put that as a separate item there. And especially if the hours have been reduced during COVID or whatever. But doing seminars, whether it's getting out of debt, whether it's managing your finances, and it said that if the seminars typically increases the amount of productivity for the employees, because whether you realize it or not, business owner, they're still going online and checking their balances. They're going online and finding out all the things that they need to find out about how to get peace of mind in their finances or get to the place of wellness. So why not bring a seminar in and allow them to have that time, give them 30, 45 minutes or whatever amount of time to get the information that they need. The other thing, as you grow your business, you can set up group benefits, whether it's group life insurance, group disability. What's interesting is, for many folks, especially African American, the only benefits that they have, like life insurance or disability, would be that which the employee gives them at work. It's always nice to have something outside of work, because a lot of people realized that during COVID, that when I left work, I lost my life insurance. I didn't have disability. I didn't have health insurance. I had no benefits at all. So some benefits you can get outside of work. Life insurance is one of them, and disability is another one. Supplemental disability. The other thing in terms of managing disruption, when I talk about managing disruption, that is what happens when you, the business owner, didn't get the PPP money, but how does that affect the business owner? Having a contingency plan in place, having funds that you, at least enough to make payroll. And again, those employees will remember those employers who were faithful to them during COVID. They really will. And then the last one is rewarding the key employees. Like, what are those golden handcuffs that you can give them? Whether it's key person insurance on them, it could be critical illness insurance that you can get. It could be the group executive plans. There's lots you can do for employees. And so as you grow your business, making sure that you have those things in place. Make sure that you treat your employees well, because they really are the lifeline of your business. So and this is getting close. We'll still end on time. Let's talk a quick minute here about legacy and building generational wealth. We hear a lot about this whole bit of generational wealth, and we're great to talk about that. But here's the deal. If you don't take care and look at those 10 Ds and put a plan in place for them, there is no generational wealth. There really isn't. Many of those things are just quick fix that you can put in place, and then you do your annual reviews and monitor them. But what's your big vision for financial wellness? And I just want to throw a few of them out there, 6 of them out there, is that you need a game plan for financial peace of mind on the personal side as well as the business side. Like how much money you need to have in the bank in terms of saving to give you the financial peace of mind that you need. You need to put your insurances in place. We do need to have that. And we need to have insurance that fits with our goals. So if you have a temporary goal, then you need term insurance. If you have a long-term goal that lasts a longer period of time, you may need to put some permanent insurance in place. The other thing too is you grow your business, plan for your retirement. Don't spend everything, save a portion of everything that you earn, whether it's for the business or on the personal side. And then the other part too is going back to the disability for a minute and talking about planning for retirement. If you are not paying yourself as a W-2 employee, as a business owner, then you're cheating yourself in terms of whether it's money for Social Security, whether it's putting a disability policy in place. Because if you're not paying yourself, you can't put a disability income insurance policy in place because you don't have any income to protect because you never paid yourself. So again, that has a lot to do with planning for your retirement as well. Making sure that you're putting money aside, whether you're disabled, whether you're well, it doesn't even matter. Always set it up systematically that you would plan for retirement as well. Legal documents to transfer wealth. Like your last act of stewardship is the proper distribution of all of your assets. Before you die, that's your last act of stewardship. Do you transfer it to the person in the family, the oldest or the middle child or whoever is the best with the funds, or you transfer it because somebody is the oldest? You've got to look at that. Like do I have wills and trusts in place? Do I have medical directives in place? I always tell my husband, listen, in the event that I'm on a some kind of whatever to keep me alive, do not pull the plug. I'm just taking a break. I'm just going to believe God that I'm going to be okay. Do not pull the plug. He already knows that. He knows that already. But again, you need to put that, make sure your medical directives specifically state, do you want to be on a respirator or a ventilator or whatever it is? Like for me, listen, I'm just going to believe in complete health, that I never have to deal with that. But you still need to have that as part of a medical directive, making sure you have your wills and trusts. And speaking of transferring wealth, like in your checking account, do you have a payable upon death listed on your checking account? So if let's just say if my husband and I have two separate accounts and my name is not on his account, if he passes prematurely, that account has to go through probate unless it's already in a trust. It has to go through probate unless I have a POD, a payable upon death. Payable upon my death, give this money to my wife. Other than that, it has to go through the full probate process. And then the other part is control your personal spending. I mean, that includes paying your taxes. That includes taking care of student loan debt, making sure you have the biggest vision that you can have. But you have to put the plans in place. And again, we talk a lot about generational wealth, but generational wealth is a strategy. Like one of the things I wanted to know was, like, how many of those, the Green Book, how many of those Black businesses are still in business? And I'm going to try to find the answer because I don't think a whole lot of them are in business. Only a very small few are still in business because we've got to do the business continuity and the business continuation plan and the business succession plan. But generational wealth says, I am building this business to help the next generation. And that means I need to put all of the criteria and the strategies in place to make sure that that happens. So believe it or not, we're down to questions if we have any additional questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. This has been such a very informative webinar. And I'm so glad that you're putting up your contact information because I want people to be able to reach out to you with more information. Now, there were a couple other questions that came through, and Sandra has asked a question about savings account. Is there a savings account for business, and what does that look like? Is it investments, or what would you call those types of accounts?
When you talk about the risk management and contingency planning, I would say you would put it in a high yield account, like a money market account, as a beginner, as a beginning spot. If you put it in the stock market and the market goes down and you need the funds, you need to put it someplace safe that you can tap into it when you need to. So like a money market account, don't put it in something that you can get penalized. But I would just say put it in a money market account, just something simple. And here's the thing, strategies for wealth is not hard. It's just a matter of doing something. Even if you start off small and you can go bigger.
Okay, and thank you for that response. And then there was a second question for a new business owner. Do you have a recommendation for a percentage of revenue to save or a percentage of your profit to save?
I would say it depends on what your expenses are. That's the first thing I would do. I would look at what my expenses are every month. And then I would look at what the revenue that's coming in. Okay, like it depends on if you have a risky business or the money doesn't come in. Like, do I want to save enough for the 3 months of expenses? Do I want to save enough for a year? I mean, for many business owners, they're wishing they had saved 2 years. If you look at COVID, because then their business they would not have to have pivoted. They would not have to deal with it. And so for me, I would still, at a minimum, I would start with the 10% at a minimum until I get to the point that I can cover 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year of expenses for the business. And it also depends on the type of business that you have. If you are a government contractor, you want to make sure you save up enough money so that once you get the contract and the government is late paying you your money, you want to make sure you have enough money or a line of credit to make sure that your employees get paid and your business continues to thrive. So it all depends on the type of business that you have as well.
Oh, I like that response. There's a couple more questions that are coming in based on what you're saying. First, I want to read some feedback. Thank you, Mary, for this timely summary of the essential components of a comprehensive plan for life. I'm looking forward to reviewing the recording to make sure that I get those 10 Ds. So I like that.
Fantastic.
Sandra says that this is wonderful info. Janelle Jones said that she read the book Profit First, and that helped her out so much.
Awesome book.
This last question, some people want to know what you're reading, Mary. What are the top 3 book recommendations for business owners right now?
Okay, let me look. I'm in my library that I did during COVID. So I'll tell you one. I know it's going to be, I guess, strange answer, but I would read the book of Proverbs. I'm a Christian, so reading the book of Proverbs, there's a lot of wisdom in there, and there's a lot of money strategies in that book. This one is not necessarily business, but it has more of the more dealing with head trash and personal and business together. The Wealth Cure by Hill Harper is a great book. Somebody already said Profit First. There's another book called Believe It by Jamie. I'm looking at my books that I have here. Jamie Kern. Another great book that I'm reading is Professional Troublemaker by Lovey Ajayi Jones. Like, you asked the wrong question when you asked me what I'm reading. Oh my gosh. Bruce Wilkinson book, You Were Born for This. I have so many books, and I read like lots of books all at the same time. Let's see, what else am I reading? But and then the podcast. I love Allie Brown. I love Patrice Washington's podcast. Let's see who else. I'm constantly feeding my mind. That's how you stick with that growth mindset in the midst of having hot flashes while you're presenting. But I'm constantly feeding my mind. Let's see. Oh, Scale It by Allison Maslin. The other one, what is his name? I'll remember before we get to the end of it. He's really good. Oh my gosh. I'll remember. If not, I'll make sure I have a list of resources.
Not a problem. You've given us
Grant Cardone. Anything by Grant Cardone. And especially go and listen on YouTube on him. I will tell you in advance, he has a foul mouth, but if you can get over that, he's got some great information. Great information.
All right. A lot of great books and a lot of good podcasts that you've given us, Mary. Now, a couple things that I would add is that you did go above and beyond there, not just the books, but the podcast. So hopefully everyone who is listening got a chance to list those out. Real quick, Mary, I want to thank you for being here and delivering this webinar. I want folks to know that Mary's going to be back next month on November 16th. And you have an opportunity to hear Mary again. You can register for this webinar. I just put the link into the chat. You can register for this webinar. And this promises to be another engaging, action-packed webinar. So I definitely want you all to register for that. Mary, again, I want to thank you. And then I want to close with just a couple of remarks about MassMutual. And when I think about our partnership with MassMutual, USBC, we definitely appreciate our partnership, and we appreciate them for their commitment, primarily the commitment where you all focus on education, action, accountability, your vision of a better world, beginning with creating a culture of inclusion and then a culture of belonging at MassMutual. So I know from personal experience in working with my counterparts, Beth Valente, over at MassMutual, valuing diverse backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, making sure that everyone's an integral part of the purpose to help people secure their own financial futures and to protect their loved ones. So also your commitment to supplier diversity, MassMutual's commitment to supplier diversity program aligns with their core values. It also aligns with some of our pillars at USBC. It's focused on working with suppliers to help ensure their continued investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion within their businesses. Their strategy is just always seems to be focused on building relationships, increasing relationships, working with diverse owned businesses. So we definitely appreciate that partnership. But then you also do some great things out in the community. I'm aware of the Catalyst Fund at MassMutual, and this is a commitment of, I believe, $25 million in capital investments in Black-owned businesses in the state of Massachusetts. You know, that's pretty powerful. And then also, you know, not just our community, but in Latinx community, in indigenous community, really working to make sure that they build and do their part to help initiate what I think could be the closing of the wealth gap that we talked about. So with that, I know we've gone over by 4 minutes, but Mary, again, I thank you. I can't wait to attend the next webinar. Of course, I get the privilege of having a front row seat to these things, but I certainly hope that others can attend as well. But the last thing I'll say is definitely on behalf of our president, Ron Busby, our board and our staff, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who attended and for everyone who's going to watch this video afterwards. So with that, we're going to close out. Mary, I'll give you the last word.
I thank you so much for having me. I had fun. I hope that you all learned some information as well. And if you've got my contact information, please reach out. I'd love to help and love to help you get to the place of financial wellness and the peace of mind that you so deserve. And I hope you an amazing financial journey. Thank you so much for having me.
That's why we partner with MassMutual. Thank you so much, Mary. Everyone have a great, great day and a great and blessed week. Thank you.